Welcome to the Rise Up For You podcast, where thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and executives from around the world share their practical tips, strategies, and stories to help you unleash your potential and achieve your goals. Your journey of growth to become your best starts now.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everybody to the Rise Up For You podcast. My name is Natalina Nasruddin. I'm the host of the Rise Up For You podcast and the founder of Rise Up For You. And we are so excited. We are live here in Vegas and we have an amazing guest with us today, bringing you awesome stories, the journey that they've been through. So please welcome my friend and awesome human being, Nine, to the show. Hi, Nine.
Cheers. What's up? Thanks for having me, Netta.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. So we always like to start off the episode by letting our audience get to know our guests. So I always say, brag a little bit about yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, your story.
Cool. Well, so my story probably starts as a young boy, right? Like typically when you grow up, your dad takes you fishing or hunting or something like that. And my dad was a nuclear engineer, super retired at the end of the day. So we spent the time together watching films on TV, notably the James Bond films, right? So it sparked kind of an interest in that world when I was a young kid. And I didn't really realize how much that influenced me until much later. I kind of turned around many years later and kind of saw where my journey was. And I did things like, just like Bond, my childhood hero, I was a naval officer like him that served with the special forces just like he did. I was, served in our country's secret service. So did he. I'd go on to practice the craft of intelligence at the Central Intelligence Agency. He protected king and country, and so did I, incidentally. I was oversaw security and intelligence for the National Park Service. So that's everything from like on the low end, the gun that shot Abraham Lincoln, and on the high end, the Statue of Liberty. Had a quirky interest in space. So I kind of moved off of, say, for example, the Bond trajectory, although he did make a movie that was called Moonraker, where he went to space. I applied to be an astronaut. I didn't have a chance in hell of being an astronaut because I didn't come from a scientific background. But I applied nonetheless. I tracked down the recruiter. I basically, let's call it what it is. I harassed the recruiter for a number of weeks and said, hey, like I applied, look for my stuff. She says, I don't see it in what's called USA Jobs, an online portal. I said, hey, I sent it to this address in like size 4 micro font on the job posting. And she says, no one sends anything there. I said, I did. Can you go find it? So she finds it, of course, in the envelope. There are pictures of me, a resume, a personal letter that like begs to be an astronaut. And ultimately, she stops returning my calls because, of course, they're going to reject me. So they do send me like a very cool rejection letter on old school NASA letterhead that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And not too long after that, a buddy of mine says, hey, you should check out this company called SpaceX in California. It's owned by this guy, Elon Musk. And I said, I'll check it out. And they were looking for somebody to help them build a security program pretty much from scratch. So I applied. They said, hey, everything on the security side sounds pretty good, right? It sounds like you've got like a little interesting pedigree going on. But why do you want to work at a space company? To which I said, hey, hang tight. And I pull out my rejection letter from NASA, and like their leadership kind of did this one right here. Like this guy's good to go. And I was hired, and that started like basically almost a decade-long journey where I did everything from, help us protect some of our first rockets that were built to ultimately we started to launch astronauts and stuff like that. Not to mention being around Mr. Musk was pretty cool too. And then these days, I own my own security company here in Las Vegas that does what I call Protection 2.0 for people, places, and things. And that's me in a nutshell.
I like how you're so nonchalant.
Let me out of the nutshell.
No, that's awesome. You're clearly you're so humble. I mean, you just listed like all these amazing, achievements that you've had, and you're like, yeah, I kind of like hung out with Elon and that kind of thing. But it's really cool to have you on the show. I have so many questions for you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, obviously it sounds like your entire journey right? So all the way from serving, by the way, thank you for your service, to now, like as an entrepreneur and running your own business, it's all been, I would say, like high stake, right? Like a lot of like high intensity environments, but you're obviously, like, from what I've seen, and we've also seen each other in person in Las Vegas, very calm, cool, and collected. And so I'm curious, like how do you find those two, right? I mean, because again, you're in situations where it's high risk. Situational awareness has to be at maximum capacity, from what I understand. But yet you're able to be very like calm and collected in the moment. Like how does that work for you? I'm so curious.
Oh, so that's funny. Like, number one, you train a lot, right? That's super important. But number two, I think I have like a cheat code, right? So the cheat code for me is that I'm Finnish, all right, by culture. And the Finnish people, I don't know if you've ever like maybe caught up with one. They're pretty stoic, so they say. So pretty low key like that. So I've got a bit of a cheat code.
Yeah, and one of the world's happiest countries in the world, they fall under that category as well. So okay, so that makes
Yes.
sense, and that's cool. So tell us a little bit, the thing that I heard in your story and in your journey, a couple things that popped out is resilience. You know, moving forward despite maybe not getting the yes, like for example being the astronaut, like you still took action anyways. So I'm curious for you, what do you think are some of the defining factors that have led to your success, when you serve, that have led to your success, and even just the thought of SpaceX and thinking like, what, I'm going to take my astronaut letter, you know what I mean, like thinking that far in advance. Like, what do you think are some of the defining factors for you?
So this is a quirky journey, like quirky story that I'll tell you. But I think like some of the roots of like what we're talking about started here. So when I was like maybe 12 years old, I became very fascinated in like blues harmonica. I was living in Mississippi at the time, and then there's this artist called Jimmy Buffett. Of course, he's like sings Margaritaville and these kind of things. Long story short, I became very interested in like this harmonica player that played with Jimmy. His name was Fingers Taylor. Recently passed away of Alzheimer's, unfortunately. But as a 12-year-old boy, I said, "Hey, I want to take lessons from this guy. I'm going to do that." So I go to a concert where he's at. He leaves the stage afterwards and enjoys, like, it was a blues festival. So I go find him and I say, "Hey, you don't really have a choice. I'm going to get you to give me lessons for harmonica and stuff like that." And he looks at me because he was, pretty popular with Jimmy Buffett and the Coral Reefer Band or whatever. And he says, "Okay, kid." So he gives me his number, right? And that then starts the same kind of methodology where I like contact him. His name was Greg, right? I said, "Hey, Greg, are you available? Can you spend some time teaching me and stuff like that?" In the background, I was like persevering, practicing, getting much better. And then ultimately he said yes, right? And then that led to a great kind of friendship where he brought me over, taught me how to play a bunch. It led to introductions for me to a number of the blues legends that are out there, to see things in the background, like he played with Eric Clapton and things like that. So just a remarkable kind of experience. But it started as a young kid for me, where it's just like I kind of knew what I wanted and would not take no. Incidentally, back to my Finnish roots, right? There's a phrase, or it's a word. It doesn't really translate into English very well. It's called SISU. Incidentally, it's a name for my business, and it means steadfast courage and resolve despite overwhelming odds. So that's
Wow.
probably in my DNA. But little things like that when you're young kind of help set that path. They teach you to take shots, dream big, go after what you really want. And I think you've seen that play out over my life. But one thing I'll also say that's pretty important too is you take shots that are meaningful to you. That's kind of the secret. So as a young boy, I really wanted to learn harmonica from Greg Fingers Taylor, right? And I pursued that. It wasn't like I was pursuing something that someone else wanted. That's like the key to the mojo, of course, perseverance, but then separately going after what truly like makes your heart tick.
Where do you think you got that quality from, though? Because I'm hearing you speak and I can't help but think, the nature of our business, right? Social and emotional intelligence, confidence, both in the corporate and individual space. But I can't help but think, about today's younger generation, right? That really struggle with even just raising their hand because they don't want to make a mistake or sound silly or be rejected. But I hear that you at a young age, you set your mind to something, you did it, you made the ask. And even if you were going to fall and fail, it didn't matter. Just out of curiosity, where do you think did that come from? Your childhood? Did it come from your upbringing? What is it? The Finnish, background? What do you think created that for you?
It's like a cocktail, not stirred, right? That's a little bit of all these ingredients. Of course, probably harkens back to that time with my dad, watching those films, being inspired by what was like a kind of an adventurous soul. Indiana Jones, incidentally, was a huge kind of icon too that I very much liked. And it was the thought of like, man, that's really cool. So I will say kind of everything I've done in hindsight, people may look at that and say, wow, that was pretty scripted where you went and what you did. But that was not the case. Like everything I did was because I thought it would be cool. And when I say that, I mean cool for me, that I would enjoy it. So I'd probably just like, answering your question a little bit more directly, what leads to that is just like a curiosity that is genuinely mine, that I leverage to, pursue things, like a thirst to learn, I would say.
Yeah, I know. I love that. And it's funny that you say that because I interviewed someone beforehand as well that's in the entertainment space, and they had a similar kind of topic around creativity. Like they were just always hungry for curiosity and to exercise their creative flow, right? Their creative intelligence. So I'm curious, tell us a little bit, and I'm sure some of the audience members want to know as well. SpaceX with Elon Musk, like what was that like for you? Was it everything that we might imagine it to be? What were some exciting moments for you?
So I will say the SpaceX experience was ultra rewarding for me. It, I was in the government exclusively until I went to SpaceX. It was my first corporate job. And what a fantastic place to learn. It exploded in growth. It was full of challenges. It was full of empowerment, notably, which was super cool, right? Ultimately, I was asked after onboarding a very specific question. That question was this. It says, what would it take to build a world-class security program at SpaceX? I said, give me 2 weeks. I'll come back and talk to you. They're like, great, you got one. I'll see you like at the early part of next week. I go in, I say, hey, it would take these things to build a world-class program. They said, that sounds phenomenal. How long would that take? I said, take maybe 90 days. Great, you got 60. Go get at it, right? And then, kind of the underlying premise of that is the expectation is you would just build an awesome program. So you have to scale that out, right? I talked about my experience, right? SpaceX kind of gave me a remarkable, humbling opportunity to be there and to participate in what it's doing. And then separately, it's doing that around the company. It's hiring a lot of different people from great backgrounds and stuff like that, and then empowering them to build in their respective area of expertise. So it was like a super gratifying place to be. I learned a ton. Of course, people always want to ask questions about Elon, right? And I will hold those comments in reserve. But what I will say is I look at him as one of the most brightest shining stars of our time, right? And I feel super humbled that I had, almost a decade in and around his sphere. So I learned a lot vicariously and directly about what he's up to and how he ticks, I think. But I don't know that anybody has that on lock. But a fascinating opportunity nonetheless.
100%. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. I know that you probably had to keep some things secret, but I appreciate you opening up a little bit about that. So really enjoying this conversation. What I would love to do is jump into the power section of the interview. So I'm just going to ask you some rapid questions. So first question, yeah, I know. First question for you is, if today were your last day on Earth, what is one golden nugget you would want to leave with everyone?
Golden nugget. That's interesting. At first, I thought you were going to ask me what I'd want to do on my last day, right? And I got some ideas for that. But golden nugget, I would just say, life is about, it sounds cliche or whatever. You've got this one opportunity. And then based on what we talked about, right? you've got to take shots. You've got to take risks. I think if you're doing things that don't, and that's this cliche too. It's like if you're doing things that don't scare you a little bit, like you need to push a little bit harder, like look internally and kind of push a bit.
No, I love that. Here at Rise Up For You, we're really intentional about values, and we believe that values are really the core to building an organization that's healthy in its culture, a life that's fulfilling and happy. What would you say is a value for you that's an absolute non-negotiable?
Value for me, that's an absolute non-negotiable. I would say probably generally it's like the idea of integrity, right? That's like super important to me. And then of course, like being in the security space, that would be the case. But probably more meaningful to me these days integrity is of course super meaningful, but like an add-on, and it's the kind of the mantra of my company these days, is focusing on the darkness so others can focus on the light. That phrase right there means a lot to me. And it applies to protecting people, places, and things. And then here in Vegas, and I think we've talked about this a couple of different times, right? I've been taking a lot of steps to get involved with homelessness and outreach. And that's, of course, looking at issues that others don't want to take a peek at. So,
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I have one more question for you, Nine, but before I jump into that, tell us how we can connect with you, learn more. I know you're doing some amazing stuff in regards to security, especially here in Vegas, high profile events, protecting celebrities, politicians. So if anyone is interested, how do we reach out to you? I think you also have a workshop coming up either in New York or here. I can't remember, but share everything.
Yes. Yeah, sure. So I would say the best means of like kind of tuning into what I'm squawking about is LinkedIn. I do a lot of chattering on there. And then I would say that in recent times, I've kind of found my voice. Interestingly, as a security professional, that's kind of discouraged, right? You don't talk, you're usually silent service. But lately, I very much believe that we're kind of on the cusp of a new era, right? One in which there's just tremendous, rapid technological change like AI, robotics, and all these other things. And I think the industry that I kind of grew up in is ill positioned to kind of service those advancements, and things need a little bit of a shakeup. So I'm all about what's called Protection 2.0. And the best way to kind of like tune into what I think about Protection 2.0 is on LinkedIn, but separately on our website. That's www.sisu, the term I talked about before, SISU.LA. Why the LA? Because SISU was hatched in LA, then moved to Vegas.
Awesome. I love it. Okay, we'll make sure that we put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us, Nine. My final question for you is, as you know, we're the company Rise Up For You. What comes to mind for you when you hear that phrase?
Well, number one, I love your the logo, right? You've got the mountain in the logo, and I think I've asked you before which one that is. I love mountain climbing. I've been to Mount Everest and such. So like that, when I think about Rise Up, I always think about your logo. Yeah. But it's totally cool that you're empowering people from all different, walks of life to, harness their best self. Yeah. And go after big things. Like, keep doing what you're doing. I'm proud of you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And if you see my arm shaking, it's because I have my puppy here at the corner. His name is Jabal, which also means mountain in Arabic.
Sick. I dig that.
It's been such an honor to have you. Thank you so much for joining us, Nine. Everyone that's listening, please connect with Nine here on LinkedIn, on YouTube, social media, wherever he is. He's doing some awesome work. Other than that, thank you for joining the Rise Up For You podcast. Every week, we're bringing amazing episodes with thought leaders, entrepreneur experts from around the world that are really here to help you be your best and push your potential. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We will see you next time. Thank you, Nine.
See ya. Thanks, Netta.